I'm deeply grateful.
Keep smiling, keep loving one another.
Allison Channing, thank you for being my wife.
What happens when the dream actually comes true? You fight through auditions, make it big, and then walk on stage to accept the biggest prize in Hollywood, the Golden Statue itself. For most stars, that moment launches a lifetime of glory, but for some, it's the beginning of an eerie silence. Fame fades, calls stop, and the same industry that crowned them seems to forget their names. Today, we're diving into 15 Oscar winners who seemed unstoppable until they quietly disappeared. Luise Rainer. Imagine winning not one, but 2 Oscars back-to-back and then choosing to walk away forever. That's the story of Luise Rainer, the German-born actress who stunned audiences in The Great Ziegfeld in 1936 and The Good Earth in 1937. She was just 26 when she became the first actor in history to win consecutive Academy Awards. Hollywood called her the next Garbo. Studios lined up scripts. Directors were ready to tailor roles around her. But something inside her shifted. Rainer felt boxed in by the factory-like studio system. When she delivered one of the most emotional scenes of the decade, in The Great Ziegfeld, a tear-soaked phone call filmed in one take, critics praised her as genius. Yet within a few short years, she'd grown disillusioned. She once told Louis B. Mayer, "I work from the inside out, and there is nothing left inside." And just like that, she walked away. After a few more films, Rainer moved to Europe, disappearing into quiet domestic life. Decades later, she'd occasionally pop up in interviews, amused by how the world still remembered those 2 nights of glory. Her retreat wasn't a collapse, it was a conscious exit. In an industry obsessed with staying visible, Luise Rainer did the rarest thing of all. She chose peace over spotlight. Haing S. Ngor. Few Oscar winners have stories as astonishing or tragic as Haing S. Ngor. He wasn't even a professional actor when he played Dith Pran in The Killing Fields in 1984. Ngor was a Cambodian doctor who had survived the horrors of the Khmer Rouge regime, losing everything, including his wife. When he stepped into that role, he wasn't pretending he was reliving memories burned into his heart. His performance was hauntingly real. Critics were stunned, and at the Academy Awards, Ngor became only the second Asian actor to win an Oscar. His acceptance speech was short, emotional, and unforgettable. But the attention that followed never sat comfortably with him. Hollywood wanted to mold him into a movie star. He wanted to be an advocate for refugees. So instead of chasing roles, Ngor dedicated his time to speaking out for survivors and rebuilding Cambodian communities. He made a few more appearances in film and television, but his heart was never in the glamour. Sadly, in the mid-90s, he was found dead outside his home under tragic circumstances. Friends believed he was targeted for helping expose violence in his homeland. Though his life was cut short, Haing S. Ngor's legacy lives beyond film. He was an actor by chance, but a hero by choice. F. Murray Abraham. When Amadeus hit theaters in 1984, it wasn't Mozart who stole the movie, it was Salieri. And the man behind that unforgettable jealousy and brilliance, F. Murray Abraham, went home with the Oscar for Best Actor. His portrayal of a composer consumed by envy was so layered, so human, that it earned him comparisons to the greats of Shakespearean theater. Winning should have been his launchpad, but it didn't quite work out that way. Hollywood didn't know what to do with Abraham's gravitas. He wasn't the handsome leading man type, nor the character actor studios could easily slot into roles. Despite immense talent, the offers dried up. He appeared in smaller films and theater, but the spotlight dimmed fast. Abraham later said that winning an Oscar can sometimes be the kiss of death if you don't fit Hollywood's mold. It wasn't that he stopped working, he simply stopped being seen. For decades, he hovered on the margins until shows like Homeland and The White Lotus brought him a new wave of appreciation late in life. In a strange way, his disappearance wasn't failure, it was survival. Abraham stayed true to the craft even when the cameras moved on, proving that an artist's worth doesn't depend on the red carpet. Adrien Brody. When Adrien Brody walked onto that Oscar stage in 2003 to accept his Best Actor award for The Pianist, he made history. At just 29, he was the youngest man ever to win in that category. His emotional performance as Władysław Szpilman, a Jewish pianist surviving wartime devastation, had critics calling him the future of Hollywood. That spontaneous kiss with presenter Halle Berry became an instant headline, and for a brief moment, Brody was untouchable. But fame in Hollywood can fade as quickly as it arrives. After The Pianist, he took on a series of ambitious but uneven projects: The Village, The Jacket, and King Kong. None of them cemented his superstar status. His artistic choices were bold, sometimes too bold, drifting between art house dramas and big-budget experiments that didn't click with audiences. By the late 2000s, Brody had largely vanished from blockbuster territory. He popped up in Wes Anderson films and European indies, showing flashes of brilliance, but never again reached the spotlight that The Pianist promised. Some say he was too selective. Others think he never found another role that truly matched his intensity. Adrien Brody's story feels like a quiet echo, proof that sometimes winning early can be both a blessing and a burden. The world gave him its highest honor and then looked the other way. Monique. Few Oscar moments hit as hard as Monique's acceptance speech in 2010. Her raw, heart-wrenching performance in Precious as an abusive mother shocked audiences and earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She stood on that stage in a blue gown, thanking Hattie McDaniel, the first Black woman ever to win an Oscar, and declaring, "Sometimes you have to forego doing what's popular in order to do what's right." It was a bold statement, and after that, things got complicated. Rumors began to swirl that Monique was difficult, that she refused to play Hollywood's political games during award season. Directors who once praised her kept their distance. She later claimed she was quietly pushed aside for speaking up about unfair treatment. Despite the silence from major studios, Monique never faded completely. She returned to stand-up comedy, directed her own projects, and kept using her voice on her own terms. In recent years, streaming platforms have begun to give her a second chance, proving she still has the power to command attention. Her disappearance wasn't from lack of talent, it was from standing her ground. Monique didn't vanish by accident. She walked out with her head high, showing that the truth sometimes costs more than any trophy. Timothy Hutton. At just 20 years old, Timothy Hutton became the youngest actor ever to win an Oscar for Ordinary People in 1981. His performance as the fragile, grief-stricken son in Robert Redford's directorial debut was extraordinary, so natural it felt like watching real life unfold. Critics called him the next big thing. Studios lined up offers. Everyone expected him to dominate the 80s, but that bright spotlight dimmed almost immediately. Hutton chose quieter, more introspective roles in smaller films like Taps and Daniel, trying to avoid being typecast. He seemed determined to play the long game, but Hollywood didn't reward restraint. By the mid-80s, his name was fading from marquees. He worked steadily, yes, but never again at that Oscar-winning peak. In the 90s and 2000s, he shifted to directing and television, appearing in shows like Leverage. Yet the buzz of his early fame was gone. Interviews later revealed that Hutton struggled to reconcile early success with the unpredictable tides of fame. He wasn't a recluse, he just quietly stopped chasing stardom. In a town obsessed with youth, Hutton's story became a cautionary tale. Sometimes getting everything too soon leaves nowhere else to climb. The kid who once symbolized Hollywood promise became one of its most haunting what happened stories. Mercedes Ruehl. When Mercedes Ruehl took home the Oscar for The Fisher King in 1992, she was radiant, a powerhouse performance that perfectly balanced humor, heartbreak, and humanity. As the tough yet tender girlfriend of Robin Williams' character, she brought raw depth to a fantasy film. Critics were ecstatic. Everyone expected she'd become one of the defining actresses of the 90s, but Hollywood didn't seem to know what to do with her. Ruehl wasn't a glamorous ingenue or a bankable box office name. She was a theater-trained artist who valued depth over fame. After her Oscar win, she returned to the stage, starring in productions that earned her more critical acclaim, but not the movie roles her talent deserved. Throughout the following decades, she appeared in television and supporting parts here and there, but her big-screen momentum evaporated. Ironically, her brilliance, her refusal to fit into a type, may have been the very reason she slipped through the cracks. Ruehl once joked that the Oscar sits on her shelf as a reminder of what can happen when people actually see you, and maybe that's the bittersweet truth of her story. For one shining moment, Hollywood saw her. Then, as it so often does, it simply looked away. Brenda Fricker. In 1990, Brenda Fricker became Ireland's first woman to win an Oscar for her stunning portrayal of Christy Brown's mother in My Left Foot. It was a performance filled with quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout but stays with you. When she accepted her award, she thanked her mother and the mother of Christy Brown, a line that melted hearts around the world. After the win, Fricker was suddenly everywhere, cast in Home Alone 2, A Time to Kill, and So I Married an Axe Murderer. She could have easily become one of Hollywood's beloved character actors for decades, but fame wasn't her comfort zone. Fricker preferred a slower life. She eventually stepped back from the spotlight, returning home to Ireland, where she's lived quietly for years. In later interviews, she admitted she struggled with loneliness in the industry, saying she never quite fit into the Hollywood world. Unlike many who chase the next script, Fricker found contentment in retreat. She didn't vanish because she failed. She vanished because she was fulfilled. Her Oscar didn't launch an empire. It closed a chapter. In a business that worships attention, Brenda Fricker proved that peace is sometimes the most powerful encore. Cuba Gooding Jr. "Show me the money." It's one of cinema's most iconic lines, and it made Cuba Gooding Jr. a household name. His electric performance in Jerry Maguire in 1996 earned him the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And that acceptance speech, full of laughter, energy, and joy, remains one of the Academy's most unforgettable moments. But the joy didn't last. After that night, Gooding's career became a wild roller coaster. He turned down strong scripts, choosing roles that didn't match his talent: action flicks, weak comedies, and forgettable thrillers. For a while, he was everywhere, but rarely in anything worth watching. The press started using phrases like career missteps. By the mid-2000s, he was starring in low-budget, straight-to-video films, a far cry from his Oscar-winning glory. Yet even then, he never truly stopped working. He took risks on stage, appeared in TV, anthologies like American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and reminded everyone that talent never really disappears, it just waits for another moment. Cuba's story is equal parts triumph and turbulence. He got the crowd to stand on their feet, and then, somehow, the applause faded. But maybe that one iconic shout was enough to echo through film history forever. Tatum O'Neal. At 10 years old, Tatum O'Neal walked into Oscar history. Her role in Paper Moon in 1973, alongside her real-life father, Ryan O'Neal, was nothing short of lightning in a bottle. She was charming, witty, and impossibly natural. When her name was called at the ceremony, she became the youngest competitive Oscar winner of all time, a record that still stands. But childhood fame is a double-edged gift. As she grew older, the offers became fewer, the expectations heavier. The film industry that adored her youth struggled to see her as an adult performer. Tatum appeared in a handful of movies in the 80s, but none reignited her early spark. The glamorous headlines soon turned into personal struggles that took her far from film sets. Despite that, she's never truly vanished, just transformed. In later years, she found solace in writing, releasing honest memoirs that helped her heal and connect with fans on a deeper level. She also made television appearances, reminding everyone of that rare, unfiltered honesty that made her famous. Tatum O'Neal's story isn't just about disappearing, it's about surviving fame before you're old enough to understand it. She burned bright, faded fast, but never stopped being real. Louise Fletcher. In 1976, Louise Fletcher delivered one of the most chilling performances ever captured on film. Her role as Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was pure control, disguised as calm and iron will beneath a smile. When she walked on stage to accept her Oscar for Best Actress, her speech was both graceful and emotional. She thanked her deaf parents in sign language, a moment so heartfelt it brought the audience to tears. After that, Fletcher seemed poised for a golden career. She had power, acclaim, and the kind of recognition actors dream about. But Hollywood proved fickle. In the years that followed, she took on steady work films like Brainstorm and Firestarter, yet none matched the cultural weight of Nurse Ratched. The industry struggled to see her as anything but the villain who broke Jack Nicholson's spirit. so Fletcher quietly transitioned to television and independent projects. She never disappeared completely, but her fame dimmed to a gentle glow. She found satisfaction not in the spotlight, but in the work itself, acting in small films and guest roles well into her later years. Louise Fletcher never lost her fire, she just refused to chase fame like a game. Her performance still echoes through modern pop culture, reminding us that disappearing from Hollywood isn't the same as being forgotten. Jennifer Jones. When Jennifer Jones won the Oscar for the Song of Bernadette in 1944, she was Hollywood's new obsession. Elegant, luminous, and mysterious, she became the poster girl for post-war American grace. But behind the camera, her story was far more complex. Her husband, producer David O. Selznick, micromanaged her career, controlling every script, photo, and appearance. For a few years it worked. She starred in films like Duel in the Sun and Love is a Many-Splendored Thing, balancing innocence with intensity. Yet by the early 1950s, the magic began to fade. Selznick's obsessive oversight limited her artistic growth. When he passed away, Jones stepped almost completely out of the public eye. She made occasional appearances, but the glitter of her early years never returned. Instead, she dedicated herself to philanthropy and mental health advocacy, co-founding the Norton Simon Museum with her second husband. When she did reemerge in the 70s, she seemed content, grateful for her past, but no longer chasing its ghosts. Jennifer Jones didn't vanish from failure. She walked away on her own terms. Her name may not be trending now, but her quiet dignity gave her something Hollywood rarely offers: peace of mind. Harold Russell. Harold Russell's story might be the most unique in Oscar history. He wasn't a movie star. He wasn't even an actor. Before the best years of our lives in 1946, he was a World War II veteran who lost both hands in a training accident. Director William Wyler saw something genuine in him and cast him as Homer Parrish, a man learning to live with the same loss. The result was extraordinary. Russell's performance moved millions. The Academy gave him not one, but 2 Oscars, one for his acting, and another honorary award for inspiring fellow veterans. For a moment, he embodied everything America admired: courage, honesty, resilience. And then, just as quietly, he walked away. Russell made only one more film before returning to everyday life. He served as chairman of the President's Commission on Employment of the Handicapped and became an advocate for disabled veterans. Fame didn't define him, purpose did. When asked why he never pursued Hollywood, he simply said, "I didn't need to pretend to be a hero. I'd already lived it." Harold Russell's disappearance wasn't a tragedy. It was a triumph of authenticity. Mary Steenburgen. Mary Steenburgen's charm defined the late 70s and early 80s. With her soft voice and genuine warmth, she seemed to radiate kindness on screen. In 1981, she won the Oscar for Melvin and Howard, playing a free-spirited wife who brought humor and heart to a story about an unlikely friendship. After that, Steenburgen's career seemed destined for stardom. She appeared in hits like Time After Time and Back to the Future Part 3, always delivering sincerity and depth. But then quietly, she began, taking smaller roles steady, unflashy, and sometimes overlooked. She became one of those actors who always made a film better, even if she wasn't in the spotlight. By the 90s, Steenburgen shifted toward television and supporting work, raising her family and occasionally returning for standout parts in indie films. In interviews, she's spoken about happiness being more important than fame. Unlike many who fade reluctantly, she chose her slower rhythm deliberately. Mary Steenburgen didn't vanish, she just redefined success. Sometimes the most graceful disappearance is the one you plan yourself. Jean Dujardin. In 2012, Jean Dujardin became an overnight global sensation. His silent-era charm in The Artist captivated audiences worldwide, and his Oscar win for Best Actor felt like a celebration of cinema's golden age. The French actor's effortless charisma and timeless presence made Hollywood fall in love. For a brief moment, he seemed unstoppable. But after The Artist, the phone didn't ring as expected. Hollywood offered roles that didn't fit generic romantic leads, awkward comedies, action roles that dulled his unique appeal. Instead of forcing it, Dujardin returned home to France, focusing on European cinema. There he continued acting, directing, and doing what he loved just without the international spotlight. While his fame in the U.S. faded, his career never died. It simply retreated into quieter corners of artistry. Dujardin himself once joked that Hollywood loved me as long as I didn't talk. His story isn't one of failure, but of cultural mismatch. Jean Dujardin proved you don't have to chase American fame to be fulfilled. His silence after the artist wasn't disappearance, it was a graceful bow. 15 Oscar winners. 15 names that once lit up marquees and then slipped into quiet corners of history. Some chased meaning beyond fame. Some simply got lost in Hollywood's noise. But all remind us that an Oscar doesn't guarantee forever, it just captures one perfect moment. Which of these stars surprised you most? Let us know in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories where fame flickered, faded, and left unforgettable echoes behind.